Hello, friends. Got a really dark one for you today, I guess. We're going to be talking about this book, Simulacra and Simulation, by Jean Baudrillard. This book is about how hyperreality replaces natural reality. And then hyperreality becomes what we know to be natural reality and is then replaced by another hyperreality. It basically asserts that this natural reality that is replaced by the hyperreality, that the hyperreality is essentially created through personal interpretations and agendas, reinforced by symbols and narratives that are created to fit and direct those interpretations and agendas. Those symbols are then replaced by symbols of symbols, and all meaning is lost. Everything is out of touch. As we progress forward, we lose the beginning of the story. And it is replaced by someone else's story and some new way of being that obscures the original base reality. That is what this book is about. Again, Jean Baudrillard, Simulacra and Simulation. This book is basically a kind of natural outgrowth of Guy Debord's Society of the Spectacle, if you've ever read that. I think it's even mentioned in here at some point. That's from 1967. This, I think, is from 1981. The big overarching point that it says allows hyperreality to replace natural reality is that we lose our concept of passive versus active. That when we lose the ability to tell the difference between what is passive and what is active, then we allow other agendas to infiltrate that natural reality and replace it with their idea of hyperreality, or our collective idea of hyperreality that we all just kind of mush into. Before I read this, I was thinking this in terms of it being the opposite of a natural cycle. This was put in my head by my good friend, a distinguished gentleman of West Tennessee. He thinks that the ideas here are opposite of the concept of a cycle, that they remove the idea of a cycle. I don't know about that because hyperreality also is replaced. It's also a 4-step process, just like a natural cycle of spring, summer, winter, fall, or creation, growth, demise, and death. Just as those exist in 4 parts, hyperreality is also 4 parts. So I would argue that it's still circular, but it's spiraling. More of a spiral shape than a circle. So let's take a look at those 4 parts here. They're on page 6. Okay, so the 4 parts of that make up this process of replacing natural reality with hyperreality is, number 1, you have an image, you have a symbol, you have this thing that is coming to represent something else that has been around for a long time. So this image, it is the reflection of a profound reality. So say that we have a tree, and along comes some company who makes a logo, and they define what a tree is in their logo, and they're the tree people, and they're like, this is a tree, this is our logo, this is what you associate with trees. Step 1, that logo tree is a reflection of a real tree, or a reflection of profound reality. Step 2, the new tree, the image, it masks and denatures a profound reality. You start seeing that symbol of the tree around more and more and more, and then eventually that is the symbol, and you kind of forget about actual trees. You know they exist, but you've been seeing the symbol so much that that's the tree. Step 3, that image, it masks the absence of a profound reality. All the trees are gone. This company that designed the tree logo, they've done their job. They've forested all the trees. They've cut down all the trees. Trees are no more, except we know it through this company and their logo and what they tell us a tree is. At step 4, this image, this new image, it has no relation to any reality whatsoever. It is its own pure simulacrum. They are the trees. Their logo, their image, their definition. Trees only exist as they have described trees to be, as they have told us that trees are. The old trees, they don't exist anymore. The original reality is gone. It is replaced by what this company says is the new reality. That's the 4 steps of the replacement of natural reality with hyperreality. So again, look at it like a parasite. Look at that process. Look at hyperreality as a parasite and consider the galvanization that if winter is stasis in this afterlife, if this is the underwater, the place where everything is still, there is no growth, it is death, it is this death and this rebirth within this like frozen cocoon leafless state, then we're basically taking the active and rendering it passive in this 4-step process of replacing hyperreality or replacing natural reality with hyperreality. So again, that is the whole point of all of it, is breaking down the difference between what is active and what is passive, that you don't understand what is affecting you and not affecting you, what is actively affecting you and what is passively passing you by and doesn't matter. You don't understand you're being directed. But in any case, the natural is rendered passive in this step 4 of this process with its declination in step 3. So I think that it is a cycle. It is a cycle just like any other of birth, growth, dissolution, and then galvanization or death or freezing, absence. It's just kind of looking at it from the other side of the circle. But I don't think they're in complete conflict. Even though the book does make the case that once you lose that natural reality, you never get it back. You're only replacing it with another reality, which is then replaced by another reality, which is then replaced by another reality. So again, it is a cycle, but it's a spiral. That's the difference. It is ever changing. It will never go back to the way it is. It will never come back around to 1. It'll just keep going down the number line further and further and further, even though the number line wraps around, if that makes sense. So, the book talks a lot about cinema, to make some points. It talks about the Holocaust miniseries that was on NBC in 1978. I've never seen that. It also talks about the movie The China Syndrome from 1979 about a nuclear meltdown. I did see that. And it talks about Apocalypse Now, the 1979 Vietnam movie. Basically uses these 3 examples to show that because they're all fiction based on reality. So it shows how we create these new dreams through cinema, and it's not poo-pooing cinema, but it does explain how we take these actual things that happened and we romanticize them and we sterilize them, and we present these new versions of them that then replace the old versions of them. When you are a kid who has no connection to Vietnam whatsoever, other than hearing like, well, this may be specific to like people born in the 80s, but hearing, people in your family, people older than you talking about their experience in it, you don't really know anything about it. And then you watch movies about it, and then that's how your idea of it is formed. But again, it's romanticized, it's sterilized. It's not exactly how it was. It's just how we are leading it to be in the collective memory. Another big theme in this book is the implosion of meaning in media. And this is very, very ahead of everything going on right now. Basically, it makes the case that the more information we have, the more meaning is neutralized. It uses the context, strangely enough, of call-in television shows. It basically says that media in such cases as call-in television shows, which now we have everybody saying whatever they want everywhere, that basically the media gives an appearance of communication and participation, but it actually like stifles critical thought and meaningful interaction. So in the example of the television call-in shows, same as with everybody in the comments section nowadays. When everyone has armchair opinions of equal weight, when no one can be, everyone considers himself a master of information, then truth breaks down. We have fake news, right? Alternate facts. And then this vacuum that remains in the absence of truth is then filled with the whims of like advertisers and moneymakers, people pursuing capital. And from that, symbols become self-referential within a bubble. All of this meaning, this absence of meaning, is then replaced by direction to the symbols that they want you to focus on. And to that end, we kind of become just all this convoluted goo of infirm tagalongs, I guess. The book is very hard on advertising. It really hates advertising, the idea of advertising and how just dirty and disgusting it is. I happen to agree. I hate advertising. I hate even thinking of it as a necessary evil. It's just, to me, like there's so many other things you could do with money, but this is not a preach about advertising, because obviously I'm maybe going to make advertising dollars from this channel someday, but there is something disingenuous, genuinely, like generally, about advertising, that it is just like pertaining to whatever base nature you have to like capitalize off of you. Be damned what they actually know about you or may have ever potentially garnered from having an actual conversation with you, God forbid. But it is a glut of those symbols infiltrating everything around us, saying, look at me, 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 until that is all you see. It also gets into concepts like cloning and holograms, the use of holograms to like build false realities. Doesn't go too deep into all that. Just kind of mentions it, and obviously we're not quite there yet with the holograms, but it does like pose those as possibilities for like setting up new realities around us and like adding to the simulation that we live in, not in the way that it's in a giant computer necessarily, but that has been just created by the interest of capital around us, that it's not necessarily a technological simulation, although if they're using cloning and holograms, it definitely is. But it's not like I don't have a body, I exist digitally. It's that my body is being desensitized, again, to the idea of passive versus active, and then manipulated by the lack of that perception. It also brings up an example of this place. I think it's in Paris. I don't know how to say it. Pompidou Center. I don't even know if it still exists, but it's apparently some sort of like tourist museum area where they're taking all of the history of Paris or France or whatever, and all the paintings and all the everything, and they're like consolidating it into this nice clinical building, this space where developers are making profit, and you can come see all the blood and sweat that went into this art and went into this history in this new, behind glass, like, let us show you how it was type of way. Again, that is not the way. It is the way as presented. The idea here is that the end result of all of this ends up being a panopticon. That is where we're constantly under the idea that we are under surveillance, that we are always being watched, and therefore behave appropriately, behave in a calm and measured way as not to upset the secret police that are watching us, whether they actually are or not. Because again, you don't need the reality of actually being watched when you can build the hyperreality of everyone assuming they're being watched, and then again, acting accordingly. That's what this ultimately all boils down to, is that the pursuers of capital will set the reality. And within that reality, they will keep you in a position where you cannot fight the reality. One thing I'll say is it makes a very, very good, this book makes an extremely good case for veganism or vegetarianism, or at least just eating free-range animals. That was something that really struck me and stood out here, is the hyperreality that we have built around animals and the oppression of animals, and how we have come to really allow ourselves to oppress animals. And it compares this to a form of, well, it doesn't compare it. It says straight up that this is racism. And it is racist. Animals are another race. They are a race of some kind of animal, and we see them separately from ourselves and look down on them as below ourselves. That is racism. Just to expound on that, it compares modern livestock farming to incarcerating people, and it talks about how incarceration breeds mental illness. And it does it in all species. It talks about how humans will get allowances, that even if they're in prison, they get like some time outside and different, different things to like stop them from going crazy. But animals, they don't really get that. And we're not going to give them that because they don't speak. Because animals don't speak, we're like, we're extra racist toward them. They can't communicate with us. All right, they're meaningless to us. They're nothing. So they're dehumanized because they don't speak. And we think if you speak, then you must be human. If you can't speak, you're less than human. So talks about, it specifically mentions rabbits, how rabbits get anxiety in these like close quarters, and it like prevents them from reproducing and causes like all these other like physical effects. Talks about chickens and how chickens have like mass hysteria when they're in these small places, and then they'll like end up like going crazy and then kind of going off the corners and hiding. And then it talks about pigs and how pigs, when they're all stuck together, like resort to cannibalism, and even babies are like licking things, like trying to find out, what do I eat? What do I eat? So it does very briefly make the case that free range is better, although it kind of is like, hey, you should just not eat animals. I would love to not be able to do that. I would love to not ever eat animals, but I don't know if I can do that. But I definitely, in the future or in the present, I'm trying to look for like free range options because they're more humane as far as the mental things that are caused by in any creature by keeping them in this compact space. The book definitely like gets into the idea that like killing and eating your food, there's nothing wrong with that. But again, there's something spiritual and something like a human experience in that is just ripped apart whenever it's just this mass production of a living creature that is just like whose mental state of mind is just ripped apart for our, I won't even say sustenance, for our like food pleasure. That really got to me. So, lesson of the book, we have really replaced our natural relationship with animals with this hyperreal relationship where we just have no respect for them at all and treat them like garbage and are racist towards them again. So I don't know, if you want to be really bummed out, you could read about that. One more point I want to talk about here is nihilism. The book makes the case nihilism is no longer born of like destruction, that it's no longer aesthetic or political, but neutral and indifferent. That the neutrality and indifference are what essentially creates nihilism at this point through desensitization. It actually, this is a rough thing to say here. The book essentially says that terrorism and fascism are essentially good because they shake us out and show us the natural reality, because they disrupt the hyperreality by giving us something to fight against, to show us something that is just objectively oppressive and terrible, so that we're not lost in the dream of the hyperreality. We do seem to be returning to a political nihilism. This book was published in 1981. We're like 40 some years past that now. I do feel like there is a political nihilism that is definitely making things bad in the country I live in, America, So maybe this idea of political nihilism potentially returning, in my view, not according to the book, but maybe this is just like the first step in a new round of hyperreality that is replacing the last hyperreality. Because even like fascism itself cannot be agreed upon right now, whether it's like good or bad, which is out there. But the people who think it is good, I don't know if this is why they think it's good, because they think we need to be shaken back to our natural reality. I don't know. I'm not pro-fascist, so I can't really see it on that side, but I do understand the argument in this book that the shaking up of a thing is the only thing that can return us. The breaking of a dream is the only thing that can like show us the waking state. But again, we're in this period where cruelty is neutralized, and that to me seems very on point for the concept of what is active and what is passive being rendered ambiguous, which is how they get you. It's how the hyperreality builds. So anyway, I don't know what else there's to say about it, but now maybe you know more about it. The book's worth a read. It's a very dense read. And as far as what this means for death and destruction, the theme of our channel, just that it's ongoing. That one thing dies and is replaced by another. That hyperreality is created on top of, from the fading idea of the natural reality. And even if we never go back there, it's always moving onward and outward into the past, in the afterlife, and the lost memories and the lost realities. Like and subscribe.